starting out, you're going to have roadblocks. You're going to
Yeah.
have days where you're like, what did I sign myself up for? What did
Yeah.
I do? And you're going to have them more often than you think. But just
Yep.
know you did the research, you did your due diligence. There are processes in place. They work. Follow them, trust them, and not let that whole like spiral effect take over. You can't. You failed the moment that you let that happen.
Yo, 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 this is the Streetwise Podcast. We're here to help you level up your game, level up your leadership, and level up your life. I'm your host, Matthew McReynolds. I'm a multi-brand franchisee, and I'm a franchise consultant where I help people find, launch, and build their ideal business. My main goal is to help you get off of zero and become the person that your dreams need you to be. Buckle up, get your popcorn ready. Let's go.
On today's episode, we talked to Dana DeMarino with Franchise Fastlane. She represents the brand Tippi Toes. And I really like this brand. I think it's a fun one. It's one that you gotta love kids. You gotta love the community. You gotta engage. This is one that you can't just be focused on profitability in and of itself. You get into business ownership because you're striving to achieve something big. You want to build a legacy. Making money is a part of that for sure, but specifically in franchising, there's got to be a bigger why than just making a lot of money. There's other ways to make a lot of money. So if you get specifically into franchising or launching a franchise business, there should be something else involved. Now, whatever that is will probably determine the brand that you choose. But if you choose a brand like Tippi Toes, you're going to love the community. You're going to love working with kids, seeing kids grow and learn and develop. Anything in the child enrichment space is going to fall into that category. And I am a big fan. I'm also a big fan of Dana DeMarino. It's very interesting talking to her. Not only is she in development for Tippi Toes under Franchise Fastlane, she's also a franchisee of multiple franchise brands, one being Decalash and the other being Tippi Toes. So cool. It's not every day that you talk to somebody that understands the struggle of running a business. It's super important for franchise development reps to understand what that role is, because they are the gatekeepers essentially in letting people in. And so you know that if you're looking at a brand like Tippi Toes and you're talking to somebody like Dana, she understands what you're getting into. She understands the pros and also the cons. And I would like to believe that somebody like her is going to give you the best possible blueprint and platform for success. Get your popcorn ready. Buckle up. Grab your notebook and a pen. Let's go.
Hi.
All right. Hello. All right, everybody. We got Dana DeMarino with us today. Did I say that right?
You said it right. You got it.
All right. Good. How did you get started with Franchise Fastlane? What's your role and what are you up to?
Yeah. So actually, February 6th was my 1 year anniversary at Franchise Fastlane. It
Let's
went
go.
by so fast, like Fastlane fast.
Yeah.
It just has been the most amazing year with Fastlane, honestly. When my 1 year came up, I was like, wait a second, it's already here. There's no way. There's no way that this year went by that fast. But anyway, so I got introduced to Fastlane because I'm also a multi-unit franchise owner for a brand called Decalash. And so I
Okay.
have two eyelash extension studios one in Canton, Ohio, and one in Akron, Ohio. I've had them for over 3 years now. So they're kind of moving and grooving and doing their thing. And then the woman who sold me my territories, so the lady who did development for Decalash, I went to her and I was just like, I'd love to get into the franchise world from more of a job perspective than from a a Z perspective.
Sure.
And she was like, you have to check out Franchise Fastlane. You just have to. And my background is really just, I've started multiple different businesses. I've done real estate. I've just kind of really done the hustle and bustle of life. My grandpap always used to tell me that's the school of hard knocks. So, my Italian grandfather, I that was always my thing. I went to school for business administration, and I just never went like the normal route of like finding a career and staying with that. And so I got into Franchise Fastlane because of Heather McPherson. She sold me my Decalash territories, and she could not say enough fantastic things about Franchise Fastlane. So I applied, and it just so happened to be that it was also at the same time that they were onboarding with Tippi Toes, and it was a match made in heaven with Tippi Toes. Tom Ryan, who is the VP for Team Pink, which is the team that I'm on, he interviewed me and he saw that match right away. And ever since, it's just been, it really was meant to be. And I know that sounds crazy, but the second I met the founder and her sister, who's a co owner of Tippy Toes, I felt like I knew them my whole life. I really did. And so I was like, oh yeah, this is it. So I honestly, it was just like the right place, the right time. And even though I didn't have development experience before that, but my official title is director of franchise development at Fastlane. But I am the director that is exclusively on the Tippy Toes brand right now. And then
Awesome.
since then, I actually opened up a Tippy Toes franchise territory in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So now I'm a
You
franchise owner.
did. Holy cow. Okay, no, that's really cool. That gives us a great way to kind of navigate the rest of the conversation. So, can you briefly explain, briefly is relative, what Franchise Fastlane is, how it operates as an FSO, with franchise sales organization? Some people might not truly know or understand what the organization does, what it's meant for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, Franchise Fastlane is the best. But second of all, so Franchise Fastlane, what it is, it's a franchise sales organization, so an FSO.
Okay.
And what they do is they're basically like a third party to franchise brands that are looking to grow and expand their businesses across the country. So they're looking to sell more territories, sell more businesses to people like myself or people that are looking to buy a franchise. We basically facilitate that through what we call a discovery process. So there's 20 something, maybe 30 now, different brands that Fastlane is partnered with, and each brand has a me on the brand and a director of franchise development, and we all just every day take people through who are looking at different franchises through what we call a discovery process. And in that discovery process, we're ultimately just educating them on everything that they need to know, like all the nooks and crannies of the business that they're looking at. We take them through a validation process, so they get to talk to franchise owners that are currently operating the business and really just explore that aspect of it. So for the brief description of what Fastlane is, it's a franchise sales organization that partners with brands to sell territories, to sell businesses to people that are looking at brands that we're partnered with.
Beautiful. Okay, so I think there might be a misconception. Maybe it's true though that the development reps that work at franchise companies or FSOs, that they're really pushing sales and they're trying to get as many people into a system as possible because you get paid commissions when people buy franchises. How would you maybe walk somebody through that process and maybe kind of poke holes in that theory? Like,
Yeah.
what are you actually looking for in franchise candidates that you get to talk to?
Yep. So I will argue that, I mean, technically, yes. Is this the concept of sales? Sure. But I will argue that in the sense that the brand is vetting the candidate just as much as the candidate is vetting the brand. And for instance, for Tippy Toes, we want to make sure that we're bringing in the right people that fit the culture that has been created at Tippy Toes, because that's what will create an environment for the entire network. That's what will maintain that longevity of the business, is making sure that the right people are part of this brand. If you bring the wrong people in, I mean, it's the whole concept of one bad apple spoils the whole bunch, you know. So you want to make sure that you're really bringing the right people in, because the right people are the people that will produce for that brand. And just if they're not the right person for Tippy Toes, they might be the right person for a different brand. So the reason I say that, and the reason I want to address that, is for the simple fact that I'm not here to sell you on a business if you're not going to be the right fit. I'm here to educate you on the business so that you can make a decision and decide if this is the right fit for you. Because the last thing that we want to do, and I cannot stress this enough, the last thing that we want to do is bring in somebody who is not the right fit. And then, I went through this and I sold them on this brand, but they're not the right fit. I our whole goal is to make sure that you understand the ins and the outs, be as transparent as possible, educate you, not sell you, educate you. There's a difference on what the brand is. Have you talked to current franchise owners, and tell them to be as transparent and honest with you as possible? Because if we're not being honest with you and we're trying to sell you on this, you have this idea of what you're getting into, and then you're in it and it's not what you thought it was, and then that's a problem. So we want to make sure that we are providing accurate, honest, transparent information, so that whenever you get into the system, you're not thrown off guard. You're not, oh, like, thanks for the heads up kind of a thing, because we don't want that at all. We'd rather it just not happen at all than the wrong person come into play and say that they were not aware of something. That is the last thing that we want. So no, I don't want to sell this to somebody. I want to educate the right people for this brand.
When you talk about the right person, you've got to vet them and what their financial capacity is and their strengths and their weaknesses. How much does the culture of the brand fit into how you validate potential candidates? I know you're working for Tippy Toes. Is there a certain avatar that fits into the culture where somebody else might not? And you can define your answer within Tippy Toes because that's the brand that you work on, but you can also go broad too, because I feel like every brand is going to be a little bit different based on who they're trying to bring in, based on what it does. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I mean, it's more than fair. I mean,
Okay.
if you have somebody, I'm just going to use McDonald's as an example because everybody knows McDonald's. I
Sure.
mean, the person that's looking at a McDonald's franchise is probably not the same person that's looking at a kids youth enrichment brand. I mean, it's the concept comes into play where what Tippy Toes is, I mean, we're dealing with kids. There's a passion side to this, really getting into the idea of wanting to connect with your community, wanting to make an impact on kids. If you have somebody who is looking to buy a business because the financials are good, and that's the sole reason, you're probably not the right fit for Tippy Toes, because both things come into play for Tippy Toes. You need to really love being part of Tippy Toes. You need to really want to impact kids, and then the financials come, so the two things go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other with Tippy Toes. Whereas other brands, you can. They're not necessarily like mutually exclusive kind of a thing. So I think that, I mean, just for obvious reasons, you have so many brands out there that are more financial driven, or business model driven, but that's why it is so important to go through a discovery process and really understand what the brand is, to see if it's the right fit. Because you don't know until you go through that what that really looks like, or what that means for that business. I mean, there's thousands of franchises out there. To say that like one size fits all is pretty, just very, I don't know the
Hogwash.
word I'm looking. Yeah, it's it's pretty naive to say that. So
Sure.
um I think that, whenever you really dive deep and you do your due diligence and you try to really vet the brands, several brands, um, that's where you can really start to understand what the right candidate means.
How do you practically go through that when you're talking to leads, whether they come in organically or from consultant like myself or different broker networks? How do you vet? Because obviously you're looking at numbers first, but then you really have to dig into and almost interview this person. So are there any things that you fall back on a consistent basis when you're going through that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's necessarily like a tangible thing that I fall back on, but it's more of the intangibles that I'm looking at. And I think that having a good gauge of character plays a big part in figuring that out. But our first call is called an intro call. And that's where we take that first initial 30 minutes, 60 minutes to get to know that person on a personal level. What is their reason for wanting to look at a franchise? What is their why? What are their interests? And so really digging deep and understanding that, like just all of those things coming together. The way that they answer those questions, or how engaged they are in the conversation, or what questions they ask, those all are very good, um, you know like reasons or identifiers as to what I'm looking for. If somebody comes on my call and they're like, I just want to know about the numbers, I don't want to know about anything else. Well, that to me is a sign right away that this probably isn't the right brand for you, because you can make great money with Tippy Toes, but that cannot be all you care about with this brand.
The thing that I've learned about franchising is that there's so many different types of people that come in for so many different reasons. And so having somebody on both ends that can help facilitate them, because they might not always know. They might have just been educated on, I'm getting into this for the investment purpose. And yeah, it makes sense that it doesn't fit. What do you like from, maybe coach me up a little bit? I'm newer as a consultant. What do you like about the consultant networks? What do you like that some consultants do that are good, that some don't do? And you're just like, oh man, can we be better? Help me out.
Everybody's great. I have nothing bad to say.
Okay. Is there anything specific that you like that consultants do that helps you do your job, or you think that helps facilitate the process for
Yep.
candidates? Because at the end of the day, we're trying to help these people, build a legacy.
Yes. I think it is so awesome and so important whenever consultants really take the time to get to know their candidates as well. And they also know the brands very well. So they understand all the brands that they can potentially offer to their candidates. But I think it goes so far whenever a consultant really takes the time to get to know their candidate and really sits down and thinks about what brands to show them as opportunities to go through a discovery process with. Because the last thing that any of us want are for you to just, you know, the whole concept of throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. 9 times out
Sure.
of 10, when you do that, nothing is going to stick. If you're just throwing a ton of things at the wall. So, but if you're finding good quality people and matching them with good quality brands that match with their interests and what they're actually saying to you, not just what you're hearing, I think that goes so far, and that sets my discovery process up with success from the very beginning. The other thing too is really letting them know, um, there are certain, you're vetting these brands, but they're also vetting you too. So, you want to be active. You have to understand that, like, there's a process that they have in place for a reason. We don't create these discovery processes the way that they are just for our own health. There's a reason or a method to the madness. There's so much information that we need to give you, so we structure it in a very organized way. So the first call covers this, the second call covers that, the third call covers this. And we like to stick to that process, and letting them know and understanding that. I think goes a long way as well, because they come prepared for what to expect in these discovery processes. A lot of them, if they're not coached in those ways, we spend a lot of time trying to educate them on how the discovery process works, and that's just time wasted.
Sure.
Also, knowing their timeline. Are we starting them in the discovery process at a right time? Or are they talking about buying a business 6 months from now? Right now might not be a good time to start the discovery process, because it takes anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, not 6 months. So, and
Sure.
things look so different by then. We could have a whole new franchise disclosure document by then. So, um, just different things to look at with that.
If you could like wave a wand over the franchise discovery process, is there any part that is repetitive?
Honestly, this is going to sound like a paid response, but no, I think that Fastlane, they have it down exactly the process, like of how it needs to go. It's just the way that it's organized, the way that it's structured, the way that they teach us how to have these discovery processes. I just feel like there's not really anything that has not been thought of, that has not, how should we do this, is there a way to do this better? I think that they've taken some serious time and some serious work in figuring out the best way to have these discovery processes. And honestly, there's nothing that comes to the top of my head with that, for that answer.
How do you guys coach up your candidates when they come in on validating with other franchisees within a system?
Yeah. So I tell them, honestly, you can talk to me till you're blue in the face. It helps that I'm a franchise owner, but I'm only allowed to legally discuss with them what is in the FDD. So if you want to get into some nitty gritty questions, get on these franchise owner calls. But the biggest thing is that I tell them these validation calls and leadership calls are the most important part of this process, because that's where you're going to get a very accurate representation of what you could potentially be getting into. The other thing is that this is a really good opportunity, if you like this brand, to meet the team on the leadership calls, and now they get a chance to meet you too. So again, remember, the brand is vetting you just as much as you're vetting the brand. So that is a really good opportunity to meet them, as much, show them that you're invested, you care, you're doing everything you can to make a good, educated decision on buying a business, because we don't want you to get through this and not feel like you don't have any questions left. You feel confident, you understand what we do, who we are. We don't want you to get to a point where you don't feel that way, and we've gone through the whole process. So I tell them all the time, like, you can call me, you can text me. Like, we want to make sure you're as educated as possible. But a big part of that are the validation calls. So get on as many as you can, show your face. So turn your camera on, ask as many questions as you can, listen to other people's questions, because they're going to ask questions that maybe you didn't think of. So it is, it's such a, it's the truth. It's such an important part of the process.
Yo, 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 thanks for listening this far. It's at this point in the episode that I want to talk about streetwise franchising, teaching, training, building. Streetwise franchising. As a franchise consultant, it's my job, it's my absolute pleasure, and it's my mission to help aspiring entrepreneurs find, launch, and build their ideal business. I've been a franchise owner for almost a decade. I know what it means to struggle. I know what it means to build a team. If you're ready to get off of zero, if you're ready to build something for yourself, visit streetwisefranchising.com. Let's get the conversation started. Don't wait until tomorrow to build your future. It starts today. Streetwise franchising. Stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Let's get back to the episode.
Where do people go wrong in validation? Where do they miss the mark? Is it not digging deep enough? Is it not coming with prepared questions?
I think that, yes, number one, yes, not coming with prepared questions is a big one. Also, asking a question and not waiting to listen to the response before kind of going
Mm.
into like the next question. Um, I think that kind of it happens, and so you're not really asking a question to hear the answer. You're asking a question just to get the question out. And I mean,
Project. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, we all do that. It's human nature to kind of do that, but you're asking a question for a reason. So listen to the response. Another thing too is what we see happen a lot are people asking, coming in late to the validation calls and not hearing a whole first half of it, and then asking questions that have already been asked. So I always just politely ask them to, if you're going to come late to the call, at least 5 minutes or more, just listen in instead of asking questions, just so that we're not going over some of the same things again. But yeah, I think that there's really not like a bad question on validation. I think that that's the point of validation, is really just to ask whatever comes to your mind.
Now, I wanted to really dive deep into the Fran Dev experience, and I think we hit on that. Next, I want to know about you a little bit, because you're a franchisee of multiple concepts and you still have 9 to 5 job. So the term semi-absentee is sometimes controversial, and people say that it doesn't exist, but I mean, you're doing it. So how did you start in owning the Deck of Lashes? How did you start in becoming a Tippi Toes franchisee? And then what's that been like, balancing the job plus business ownership?
Well, stress is one of them.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. And not much of a social life sometimes. But
Yeah.
I will say that, it's kind of like one thing at a time, like just and hold true to that. So I've always been the person that wants to do like a million things at the same time and start them all at the same time, and that never works out. So finally, I Decalash happened for me, and I just said to myself, you know what, I'm going to get this up and running to where I need it to be before I do something else. Um, and that's exactly what I did. So I hired a manager for Decalash from the very beginning. She's been with me since day one. I think for me, well, I have to say this too, because the whole semi absentee mindset, the reason why I believe it's controversial is because a lot of people hear that and they think that from the beginning it's semi absentee. It's not. You need to put the time in and the work in initially to get your business running, to get it operating, to get it to where you feel comfortable enough to be semi absentee or an executive model or a general manager model. I tell everybody that with Tippy Toes. It's a business that provides a really unique lifestyle, because you have your nights, you have your weekends, you're working more on like daycare hours, you're not getting bombarded with, late emails, late calls. But I still say to them, but you're still starting a business. I think there's a big misconception in franchising that you're buying a business, so you sign on the dotted line and you don't have to do anything. It's just not true. I mean, you still have to create a business entity. I mean, something just as simple as that. That's still part of starting a business. So, um, and that takes time. It takes work. It takes dedication. It takes, building a team so that you can become semi-absentee, but you're not going to have a team from the very beginning. So you have to build those things. And once you build them, then yes, you can decide what works best for what you have. So I hired my manager at Decalash. She helped to build a team. Um, and at this point, she's like my right hand girl, So I found her on Indeed, and now I consider her a friend, And I think that another point to that is, from a business owner perspective, regardless if it's a franchise or a startup or whatever the case may be, you need to, like, there's a fine line between being like best friends with your staff and also being their boss, but also treating them well, so to the point where they feel comfortable to, and that's not for every business. Some can operate from more of like a very executive where you're not necessarily having to communicate. But at least in the ones that I've done, I've had to maintain and keep a very good relationship with all of my employees. And I think that right there is the big piece that people miss the boat on, is they think that just because they have the staff there that the staff is happy, and they need to be happy in order to stay. Money can only go so far, like you still need to like what you do. And so I was able to do that very well with Decalash. I was able to really just build those relationships with my employees. And then once I started at Fastlane, now I am an employee. So I understand even more from the other side of it, how important that is to feel like you matter, or there's value in that. There's so much value in that. And who you work with, making sure that you're not hiring just to have people working. You're hiring the right people to do the right job. That is so important. Like a lot of people make the biggest mistake by just wanting to get started. So they'll hire whoever is willing to start right away. I think that's a big mistake a lot of the time. Not all the time. I never want to speak. I never want to speak in absolutes, but a little bit of a contradictory statement there. But you don't want to hire just to hire, because that's going to backfire on you down the road. You're trying to build a long-term team because you don't want to have high turnover. That costs you money. The turnover costs you money. Um, so it's really important to build that, and then that, I think, is a strong foundation to building a semi-absentee, which I don't like using that term, but a semi-absentee business, and then having a full-time job. I found Tippi Toes because obviously I talk about it every day, and I fell in love with the brand, and I started to realize that it's a business that, from the hours that need to be contributed to it, it's a kind of business that fits well into what I do. I mean, I'm already talking about it every day, you know, and I did hire a manager from the very beginning with my Tippi Toes. Not everybody does that. Some people really just get the business started themselves. They hire the dance instructors. They will go out selling to the schools and the daycares. They'll do all of that themselves. I hired a manager, and I also hired a sales coordinator to do that from the very beginning. Now, I have more out of pocket expenses from the beginning because I'm paying them instead of doing it myself. But again, it all comes back to, how do I treat my employees? How do I manage them? Do I manage my time well to make sure that I'm getting on calls with them weekly to go over what we're going to work on this week? And then at the end of the week, did you do those things? And not being mean about it, but hey, like, well, if you didn't do this, why didn't you? Let's talk about that. Let's figure out what we can do differently. Let's figure out how we can be better. And just, caring. Like, I mean, small things matter, like things for their birthdays. And, I mean, there's that little personal touch to building relationships. And it's not, you can tell whenever you're doing it just because you feel like you're forced to doing it, in comparison to doing it because you want to. So that also plays a big part in that too, I think. So, but that's just my experience.
No, that's good. You touched on a lot. And I find that when I ask compound questions, 2 or 3 questions in one, the answers can kind of get crazy sometimes, but you did a really good job of being succinct, and you hit on a couple things I think are really important. I tell this to people all the time that expect owning any business, or a franchise for that matter, is somehow a passive investment, no matter where you're sitting. And you can look at it as, I'm working in the business or I'm working on the
I say
business,
that all the time.
but
Yes.
I'm still working. Like, working on the business is still working. It's not passive. It takes up a ton of mental capacity. It's exhausting. It's very stressful, just as much as working in the business. It's just the time that it takes, and your freedom and flexibility to adapt your schedule around other things. You have a little bit more freedom there. You talked about the timeline to make money as important. I think, if you start a franchise, sure, you can invest in a manager or somebody, that a partner or any capacity, But when you do that, the time that it's going to take you as an individual to get return on investment or replace your salary or take anything from the business at all might be delayed because you're making that initial investment. And then lastly, I thought, and I'm glad you said it because I was curious about how you specifically facilitate this accountability and culture building within your team. Like, I've been guilty of becoming friends, just cool with the people that, who I work with. And when you do that too early, it's hard to work backwards from that. So establishing that accountability early just makes it so much easier to have those boundaries. But I'm curious, have you learned anything from working in Fastlane that you've been able to apply? You kind of notated to this already, but maybe something specific. Like, what have you been able to translate over into your teams after working at Fastlane?
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's funny you asked this question because there are things that I actually learned being an employee that I really liked how they handled things, and I started doing them with my own little small businesses. So,
Yeah.
um, I mean, something is, I mean, number one, I'm not sure if you know who Carrie Gilly is, but if you don't,
Oh yeah.
she is,
Come on. I got to get
yeah,
her on here one of these days.
she is,
Maybe you can plug Streetwise to
she
Miss
is the
Gilly.
epitome of like what people should want to like strive to be. She is just so amazing. She has created such a rare and unique, and I talk about this a lot, like with my mom, with my family, with friends, how unique the environment is that she created at Fastlane. And it starts at the top. It starts at the top. And there are so many just different like personal touches on things that she still will handwrite cards to us individually for our 1 year anniversary.
Wow.
She's a busy lady and she still takes the time to do things like that with such a big company that she started. And so and just organizational things, it's all the way down to like HubSpot. So there's just so many organizational things that I learned at Fastlane that I was like, wow, this would be really nice to do this for this. Or we have different like core values. I didn't necessarily have core values for my decolashes or my tippy toes, but then I said, you know what, like I want to start really using the core values that we already kind of naturally are and making them an actual thing in my business, like how Fastlane does. We always go back to our core values, and I missed the boat on that a lot myself, and so that's something that I started to want to implement more. So just going back on things like that, that I think are really important and crucial because they're constant reminders of like why you're doing it and who we are, and things like that. So I don't know, there's just so many small little things that I can just think of that I'm like, yeah, that's what I need to start doing that for my business. So yeah, it's a Fastlane's awesome. I've learned in this year that I've been there, it's like I said, it flew by, but I have learned from the best. I just can't say it enough.
Yeah. No, I think that's so cool. And I think there's a lot of value to that. I think something that I've acknowledged within myself that I've missed because I've been on this entrepreneurial journey for so long, but I was 25 and I never really had a real, quote unquote, real job. That the structure of working for organizations with really, really good culture and training and development, I've never had a true like corporate experience. And so that's something that I've had to kind of generate organically and study and talk to a bunch of people and try to learn from the outside. So I think it's really cool, what you're doing. And I know that it comes with a lot of pros, but also a lot of struggles as well. But you're rocking through it and doing your thing. What was the biggest difference between launching the first franchise and launching the second brand?
Oh, geez. The biggest difference. I mean, there's such different business models. So it's like, I mean, there's so many differences itself and in the
Within the
actual
business
businesses.
itself. Yeah.
I mean, Tippy Toes is mobile, so there's no brick and mortar. Decalash is brick and mortar. Tippy Toes, there's,
Oh,
so
yeah.
I mean, there's specific skill set like licensed cosmetologists and estheticians and people that just want to work with kids that don't need to, be professional dancers. So there's so many differences between the two businesses, but the biggest difference I would say just from business ownership of them that like I learned along the way would be um, to not stress so much about the lows, um, because I did that and I still do that, but I'm working on it. Awareness.
Okay.
um, I I let the lows get the best of me, but you very quickly realize that they are temporary, just like the highs are. And um, figuring out how to stay in that neutral mindset for both highs and lows, I think is so crucial for business ownership because you never want to, as an owner, you cannot be an extreme. You cannot let your employees see you at an extreme because
Either way, up
either
here or
way,
down there.
you
Yeah.
can't. And so learning that I think was a big thing for me because I'm naturally a very emotional person. And so I think that it's been a big learning curve for me to do that and to just be more mindset of, okay, I am their boss. Sometimes I forget that I am their boss because I connect so much with them, and so there's a fine line of letting them see that. But going back to the highs and the lows, like you just said, getting off topic here, going back to the highs and the
Okay.
lows, I think that has been my biggest takeaway from starting to now. And I think that it goes a long way because starting out, I mean, you're going to have roadblocks. You're going to
Yeah.
have days where you're like, what did I sign myself up for? What did
Yeah.
I do? You
Yeah.
are going to have those days and you're going to have them more often than you think. You're going to. But just
Yep.
know that, again, going back to you did the research, you did your due diligence. There are processes in place for a reason. They work. Follow them, and just trust them and not let that whole like spiral effect of what did I get myself into? My whole life is over. You cannot let those feelings take over. You can't because then it's just like boop, 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 and you failed the moment that you let that happen.
Yeah. You're never as good as you are. You're never as bad as you think you are.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole journey is trying to improve every single day because you're never staying the same. You're either getting better or you're going in the wrong direction. And no, I think that's beautiful. If you were to define this chapter of your life, what would that chapter be for you? Whether that's like a professional, personal, like we're all trying to grow and move forward, or we're not even in this space. And that's what I love about being on this side of the franchising sector in general is I feel like everybody's trying to grow and get better. So what does that look like for you?
I think this is the finding professional Dana phase.
Okay, let's
Or
go.
just the finding Dana phase. I think that
Yeah.
like my whole life I've always been the kind of person that just wants to like make sure everybody else is happy and do for you and give and whatever, and that's all great, but it comes to a point where you also need to make sure that you are good too. And I think that this is the part of my life where I'm finding that I'm figuring out who I am and I'm becoming more confident in who I am. And I always second guessed things that I would say or whatever, because I wasn't confident in who I was. And so now I need to own the fact that I have done a lot. I need to be proud of what I've done and I need to stop downplaying it because I have done a lot. There's value in that. I saw this like podcast or TikTok or something, I forget what it was, where the guy that was speaking, and again I forget his name, but he was saying there's like this feeling from a business owner, it's like almost imposter syndrome, where you really have accomplished and done a lot, but there's a part of you that still feels like you're an imposter to people. And I related to that so much, not because I'm a con artist, not in that way. It's in the sense of like, wow, like you don't ever take a step back and sit there and think like, wow, I've really done this. Because every day it's a new day. It's just like one foot in front of the other. And then one day you sit there and you're like, wow, a couple of years have passed and this has already happened. And how did I get here? Like, I just feel like I just, you know, BS my way through everything,
Yeah.
like I wasn't an expert in this stuff before I got into it. I didn't know what I was doing when I got into it, but every single day I learned something without realizing I was learning something. So you build confidence in yourself whenever that happens. And so I think I'm at a point now where I'm like sitting back and I'm like, wow, like I am a business owner. I did do it. And it's kind of cool.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, again, you're dropping bars right now. I mean, just the concept of stacking bricks. And I feel like I talk about this every episode, but the book by Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan, they wrote a few together, but one of them is called The Gap and the Gain. And the concept of living in the gap is when we're comparing ourselves to others or comparing ourselves to where we feel like we should be by now, we're living in the gap because we're creating that separation. But when we're living in the gain, we're realizing how far we've come and what we've accomplished. And we can look and think back to our 6-year old, 12-year old, 18-year old self. Like, what would they think about us if they saw us right now? Would they think that we're a stressed out mess and that we're just running around and fooling everybody? Or would they be like, dang, okay, I see you doing your thing? Like, would they be proud of you? And I have to remind myself of that every single day because I feel every bit of what you just said. So that's cool. Finding Dana. I like that. I like that. What would you say? 'Cause I know you got to go, and I appreciate your time so much. This was fun. It's a little bit different for me talking to somebody that's development. It helps that you're also a franchisee because I could relate to you there. But what would you say to somebody that's struggling to make the decision to get off of zero? Whether they're stuck at their job, whether they're figuring out maybe I should launch somebody, maybe they're a high school girl, high school boy, and just wants to take a leap at something. What would you say to that person?
I would say, your initial gut reaction would say, like, just do it, like, because that's kind of how I've always like led my life. But I'm actually going to go on the other side of this
Yeah,
and just
okay.
say, like, prepare, find your base thing first, something that is, consistent for you, that is stable for you, that you can rely on, and then build from there. So if we're talking about somebody that's 18 years old, find something that can provide a stable, income for you, whether it's great money or not. It's something that you can still rely on, and then go from there and build from there, save from there, create a goal, and with that goal create actionable items to get to that goal. Like, don't just say, oh, I have this goal. Like, actually sit there and think, okay, well, what do I need to do to get there? Because more often than not, we have all these grandiose ideas and concepts and this and that, but the everybody that fails is everybody that did not create like steps to actually move forward and do it,
That's
to
good.
do that action. So, and that's not some like Instagram meme that you can like figure that out from. It's something where it's like, okay, so I have this idea and we're gonna do this. But it goes all the way down to the concept of when I sit on a call on Mondays with my manager and I say, okay, what are we working on this week? The reason why I have a call with her on Fridays is because if I don't have that call with her on Friday and check back at that list of things that we discussed on Monday, what if she didn't do it? How do I know? So it's like you have to do the things that you say you're going to do, but also put yourself in a position too that if it doesn't work out, you have something that is reliable, that it's okay. Because sometimes, it's like you might not have the best luck. I mean, I've started businesses that were not franchises before I got into franchising that did not work out. I've lost money in businesses. So with that, it's kind of like you need to have a plan. And I think that's the biggest thing. You need to have a plan.
Have a plan, work the plan, build the vision for yourself. Where do you want? There's a lot of EOS isms in what you're talking about. Last thing before I go, what did I miss? What did somebody who's actually good at this, what would they have asked you? Did I hit all the buttons of franchise development? Anything you wanted to holler at that we missed?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head with all
All
of the
right,
questions. I actually really enjoyed this conversation a lot. I think
there we
that
go.
you asked it was conversation, and I think that not everybody can do that.
That's going to be my snippet at the beginning. You know how podcasts have the snippet at the beginning? I'm going to have you saying, I actually really enjoyed this conversation, and then hit the intro. And we're just going to roll through it. That's going to be my intro. No, you were a great guest. Yeah, you were a great guest. Um, I think you are a testament to the integrity of Tippi Toes and Franchise Fastlane. And, we touched on them a little bit. And obviously, if anybody wants to learn more, they can holler at me. I'll introduce them to Dana, and then we'll move from there. But man, keep growing. And as always, I'll say stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Peace.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for making it to the end. Hey, if this episode added any value to your life at all, please like it, share it, give me a 5-star review. It's the only way that this show is going to gain traction and help more people achieve their dreams. If you're ready to start your franchise journey, visit streetwisefranchising.com. Let's set up a time to talk. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Until next time, stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Peace.
I actually really enjoyed this conversation a lot.